Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing some metric conversion. It is very common to need to go between one unit and another unit in the real world. You probably have done it several times, not even really thought about it. But we're going to be looking at how to convert metric units first. Converting metric units is really easy because all you have to do is move the decimal place. You don't have to multiply by any crazy numbers like you would in the English system. So here's what you're going to do. I'm going to give you a problem that looks like this, and this means convert 2.3 deciliters into liters. What you're going to do is you're going to look next to each unit, and you're going to look at the prefix. If there's a prefix, you're going to put the value above it. So that's 10 to the minus 1. Deci means 10 to the minus 1. You hopefully remember that from the other day. And if it does not have a prefix, so this is just liter, there's no prefix, you're going to put 10 to the 0. And you're going to look at the difference between the prefix numbers, minus 1 and 0, and you're going to subtract them, or you're just going to see how many steps you would take across a number line to get from one to the other. Well, if I subtract these, I'm going to get 1, and that's just going to be one hop across the number line to get from minus 1 to 0. So now that tells you how many times you're going to move the decimal place. The next thing you need to look at is, are you going to make the number over on this side? Is the number going to get bigger by moving the decimal place one time or smaller by moving it one time? And there's a bunch of different ways you can look at it. We're just going to look at it like this, I think. Deciliter is the smaller unit between deciliter and liter. Deci is smaller than liter. So we're going to make our number smaller. If you start with a smaller unit, you're going to make the number smaller. If you start with a bigger unit over here, you're going to make your number bigger to come over here. So I'm going to make my number smaller by moving the decimal place one time, and then you get 0.23 liters. So that's how you do that. I'll go through a few more examples. So let's convert 13 meters into centimeters. First step is look for the prefix value. So here I've got 13m. Now, m doesn't mean milli in this case. It means meter. So there is no prefix. So what do we write if there's no prefix? 10 to the 0. And above centi, we're going to write 10 to the what? 10 to the minus 2. So if I subtract these two numbers, I'm going to get 2. I take the absolute value of that, just get 2. It would take 2 hops on the number line to get from 0 to minus 2. Now that tells me I'm going to move my decimal place twice, and now I got to figure out which way. So over here, m, is meter bigger or smaller than a centimeter? Well, a meter is bigger. So since I start with the bigger unit over here, I'm going to make my number bigger over here. So I'm going to move the decimal place twice to make 13 a bigger number, and we'll put 1300. Don't ask me where this came from. Just ignore that. So 1300. So I moved my decimal place twice. Looking over another example. So here I've got km and mm. So above the k, I'm going to write 10 to the third, positive 3. And above the mm, I'm going to write 10. Now this m means milli, and that m means meter. So since there is a prefix here, we're going to write 10 to the minus third. Now how many steps do I take on my number line to jump from 3 to minus 3? That's going to be 6 hops on the number line, or if I subtract them, I'm going to get a difference of 6. So so over here, km and mm, is km going to be bigger or smaller than mm? Well, kilometer is much bigger, so I'm starting with a bigger unit. So over here, I'm going to move my number to make it bigger. So I'm going to move the decimal place 6 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 times, and I'm going to get 560,000. Here's me moving my decimal place 6 times. 560,000. Another example, here we've got a mu m. Do you guys remember what the mu stands for? What number that means? That is 10 to the minus 6th. And deci is 10 to the minus 1. So how many steps on my number line am I going to take to go from minus 1 to minus 6? What am I going to get if I subtract minus 6 minus minus 1? I'm going to get 5. I'm going to get 5. And again, we're taking the absolute value. We're just looking at the difference between them. 5 hops on my number line. Is micro going to be my big or little unit? Well, micro is the smallest of the prefixes that we've dealt with. So this is going to be the smaller one. So that means I'm going to make my number smaller by moving the decimal place 5 times. That's going to give me a pretty small number. So 0.00000. I think I got the right number. 0.25 decimeters. So that's going to be a pretty small number. Now, we'd rather really not write all those zeros. Remember, there's a better way than writing a bunch of zeros. There's a certain notation that science uses. What could it be called? The notation they use in science. Scientific notation. So we're going to look at that in terms of scientific notation instead. So converting numbers using scientific notation. This is it's done almost exactly the same way. We'll go through a few examples, and let me pause the that didn't work. Let me try it this way. And now it might work. I was hoping to draw on the screen here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do just like we did before. We're going to write the prefix value above the prefix. So liters, since there's no prefix, we're going to write 10 to the 0. And above milli, we're going to write 10 to the minus third. Okay. So how many hops on our number line is that going to make? That's going to take 3 hops. So now we need to figure out, am I going to make my number bigger or smaller? Well, liter is bigger than a milliliter. So that means I'm going to need to make my number bigger. Now, rather than moving the decimal place back and forth from side to side, what you're going to do is you're going to change this exponent. So when the number is in scientific notation, you're just going to change this number by however many times you need to move the decimal place to make the number bigger or smaller. So since I need to make the number bigger, and I'm going to do that by 3, since I have a difference of 3, it's going to be 6.3 times 10 to the 6th is going to be the answer, because I made my 3 bigger by 3. Okay, let's work a couple more examples here. Okay, above the centi, we're going to put 10 to the minus 2, and above the m, is that 10 to the minus 3, or is that 10 to the 0? Which one? It's 10 to the 0, because that means meter, not milli. So we're going to move, we're going to take 2 hops on our number line to go from minus 2 to 0. So we're going to make this number 5, we're going to make it bigger or smaller by 2, and we got to figure out which way. So centimeter, is that bigger or smaller than meter? That is smaller. So that means we need to make our number smaller. So we're going to do 2.3 times 10 to the, what did I say? Whoops, oh, that didn't want that to happen. 2.3 times 10 to the third power. Sorry, the writing prompt got a little goofy on me. Let's look at another one here. So we've got 1.4 times 10 to the minus 3 milliseconds. So milli is worth 10 to the minus 3. And then we've got deci, which is 10 to the minus 2. So that means we're going to move our decimal place 1 time in order to make the number bigger or smaller. Which is bigger? Is a millisecond bigger or smaller than a decisecond? A millisecond is smaller. 10 to the minus third is smaller than 10 to the minus 2. So that means we're going to make our number smaller by a difference of 1. And that's going to be 1.4 times 10 to the minus 4th. And that is how you do these. I guess I'll do one more here. Let's do this one. Okay. 7.5 times 10 to the minus 7. So dm, so deci means 10 to the minus 1, and kilo means 10 to the third. So how many hops on our number line would we take, or what am I going to get if I subtract 3? I'm going to get a difference of 4, okay, or minus 4, but I'm going to get a difference of 4. So I'm going to change this minus 7 by 4 up or down, and I got to figure out which way I got to do it. So little dm, decimeter, that is smaller than a kilometer, which means I need to make this number different by 4. Whoops. By 4 in order to make that number smaller. So on my drawing tools, so my answer would be 7.5 times 10 to the minus 11th would be my answer that would go in here. And I think that's about it. Okay.